In my years of journeying through this world, observing individuals and their behaviors, a profound realization has dawned on me. Intelligence is not merely a measure of what you know. It's reflected in how you conduct your life, your treatment of others, and your capacity to learn from your errors. But here's the interesting part. There are certain undeniable indicators, to be precise, that signal when a person is, let's say, deficient in wisdom. Now, before you dismiss this list with a roll of your eyes or a chuckle, allow me to explain its significance. Identifying these signs isn't about passing judgment on others. It's a tool for self-reflection, personal growth, and yes, a guide to sidestepping these traps in our own lives. It is also about extending a hand to those who may be oblivious to their own cycle of folly. So, I invite you to join me on this voyage of discovery. Together, we will uncover the 6 irrefutable signs of a foolish individual, each offering a lesson, a narrative, and a mirror for our own introspection. The road to wisdom, after all, always starts with awareness. Are you prepared to walk this path with me? Let us begin. The first sign is a closed mind. A closed mind acts as a fortress of ignorance, constructed brick by brick from fear, pride, and stubbornness. Individuals of this nature not only dismiss new concepts, but also obstruct their own avenues for growth. They reside in a rigid container where everything must function according to their familiar paradigms, and anything that deviates is seen as a menace. Their confidence often acts as a shield, because genuine confidence stems from the understanding that one cannot possibly know everything. Consider Mark, a department manager at a company where I was once employed. Mark was adamant that the traditional methods of operation were superior, despite clear evidence that his team was lagging behind competitors. When a younger team member proposed the implementation of modern project management software to boost efficiency, Mark flatly rejected the suggestion, stating, "We've operated this way for a decade, and it has served us well." Consequently, while other teams within the company made considerable advancements, Mark's team floundered, hampered by outdated procedures and declining output. Rather than confronting the issue, Mark assigned blame to his employees, the market, and even sheer luck. But never once did he question his own deeply ingrained perspective. A closed mind not only repels new information, it stifles the development of everyone in its vicinity. Wise individuals, in contrast, are not hesitant to confess their lack of knowledge and are perpetually open to learning. Stoic philosophy serves as a reminder that wisdom is not about perpetual correctness, but about the capacity to adapt and enhance. Should you observe this inclination in yourself or a colleague? Remember that embracing innovation not only cultivates personal development, but also fosters a more effective work environment. Have the courage to admit, "I was mistaken and I wish to learn." True wisdom can only flourish once the barriers of obstinacy are dismantled. The second sign is perpetual blaming. Foolish individuals are virtuosos of justification. In their eyes, nothing is ever their own doing. A project that fails is due to a tough market. A missed promotion is the result of a biased boss. But deep down, we all recognize that blame is a defense mechanism, a means for them to sidestep a confrontation with the truth. However, this very defense becomes a cage, confining them and preventing any genuine progress. Take Lisa, an event coordinator I once collaborated with. She was tasked with organizing a significant conference. When the event was a failure due to low attendance, Lisa was quick to point the finger at the marketing team for inadequate promotion. Yet, upon closer examination, it became clear that Lisa had neglected to provide the event details in a timely manner, which delayed the entire marketing effort. Even with this information, she persisted in deflecting blame, refusing to acknowledge her part in the fiasco. The outcome was a loss of trust from her colleagues, and Lisa ultimately had to resign from her role. Responsibility, while often a heavy burden, is the portal to growth. Wise people own up to their errors, not out of a fondness for criticism, but because they grasp that truth unveils opportunities for improvement. Stoic philosophy teaches us that taking control of one's life begins with taking control of one's responsibilities. If you find yourself slipping into a pattern of blaming others, take a moment to ask, have I exhausted all my options? Was there anything more I could have done? Assigning blame will not alter the result, but assuming responsibility will transform you. Wise individuals do not evade their missteps. They learn, they grow, and they advance, and so can you. Opt for the path of truth, enhancement, and greatness. The third sign is arrogance over humility. Have you ever been in the presence of someone who perpetually strives to establish themselves as the most intelligent person in any given setting? That is the third indicator of a foolish individual. Arrogance. Arrogance is more than just a cover for insecurity. It is the most significant impediment to growth and wisdom. Genuinely intelligent people understand the value of listening more than they speak, as they recognize that learning is a continuous, lifelong endeavor. Consider Michael, a manager at a major corporation. In every meeting, he would the discussion, cut off his colleagues, and even ridicule their suggestions. When the company experienced a failed project, Michael laid the blame on his team for failing to grasp his brilliant ideas. In truth, it was his own arrogance and unwillingness to listen that led the entire project astray. When his superior asked him to reflect on the situation, Michael was unable to provide a single coherent reason, as his arrogance had blinded him to any chance for betterment. Humility, conversely, is not about diminishing one's self-worth, but about thinking of oneself less. It places a higher value on learning and teamwork than on being proven right. Stoic philosophy reminds us that wisdom is only attained when we expose ourselves to new viewpoints, when we possess the courage to say, "I was wrong," and are prepared to learn from our mistakes. If you ever find yourself ensnared in the trap of arrogance, pause and question, am I seeking validation, or do I genuinely desire to grow? Wisdom is not found in making others feel insignificant, but in empowering them. The truly wise are guided by humility because they know that real intelligence blossoms when the clamor of arrogance subsides. And you can choose to be that wise. The fourth sign is a lack of empathy. A deficiency in empathy is one of the most telling signs of ignorance. It signals an incapacity to put oneself in another's position, to comprehend their emotions, or to understand their experiences. Without empathy, people exist in a state of isolation, cut off from meaningful connections, and often causing harm to others without even being aware of it. This absence not only damages relationships, but also lessens the richness of one's own character. Allow me to share the story of a colleague named Paul. Paul was in the habit of complaining about project holdups without ever attempting to understand the underlying causes. On one occasion, when a coworker named Susan missed a deadline due to her son's serious illness, Paul publicly berated her in front of the entire team. He showed no concern for Susan's personal situation, only for the results he anticipated. A year later, when Paul found himself in a similar predicament, caring for his own ailing mother, he finally grasped how his thoughtless critiques had wounded others. A lack of empathy does not merely make a person seem cold. It blinds them to the opportunities for learning and growth that come from relationships. Stoic philosophy imparts that true wisdom does not arise from knowing everything, but from forging deep, meaningful connections with others. Those who lack empathy not only fail to enrich their own spiritual lives, but also isolate themselves, leaving behind a lasting impression of insensitivity. Remember, empathy is not a sign of weakness. It is the conduit to wisdom and humanity. When you take a moment to genuinely listen to someone else, you not only offer them support, but also acquire invaluable lessons for yourself. An empathetic heart enriches your world and equips you to navigate life's intricacies with grace and insight. If you find yourself lacking empathy at times, begin by listening without passing judgment. It is the initial step toward opening your heart and mind, guiding you closer to authentic wisdom. The fifth sign is the fear of change. The comfort zone may feel secure, but it is also a form of confinement. Those who are afraid of change hold fast to old routines, even when those routines have become obsolete. They are like children, are afraid of the dark, reluctant to venture beyond the familiar. But my friends, life is a flowing river. It meanders, it bends, and it is in a constant state of transformation. The wise learn to adapt and navigate its currents, while the foolish attempt to cup water in their hands only to see it slip away. Consider Michael, a man who had lived his entire life in one small neighborhood. He was familiar with every street and every person in his community. When his adult children suggested he move to a new area with better opportunities, Michael resisted. "I know everyone here," he argued. Why would I go somewhere else? But then, the neighborhood began to transform. Old friends relocated, and familiar businesses closed their doors. Michael came to understand that even though he fought against change, the world around him continued to evolve. He eventually made the decision to move closer to his children. It was only then that he found that the new surroundings not only provided comfort, but also presented opportunities he had never foreseen. The fear of change doesn't just keep us confined to a safe space, it also stops us from discovering greater possibilities. Stoic philosophy teaches us that change is an unavoidable part of life, and only by welcoming it with an open heart can we lead a truly fulfilling existence. If you find yourself shying away from change, ask yourself, what is the worst that could happen, and what is the best that could happen? Life does not remain static, and if you do not learn to move with its flow, you will be left behind. Remember, change is a move toward growth, while resisting it only keeps you mired in fear. The sixth sign is talking more than listening. Have you ever known a family member who is convinced they know everything? They control every discussion, constantly interrupt, and seldom take a moment to hear what others have to say. This is a telltale sign of someone who talks more than they listen, a characteristic of foolishness. They are enamored with the sound of their own voice, often dismissing the viewpoints of others, which not only breeds resentment, but also weakens family bonds. Let me tell you about John, a father I once knew. Every evening at the dinner table, John would hold court. His children would attempt to share stories from their school day, but John would frequently cut in to tell his own grand tales. When his wife proposed changes to improve the family's financial situation, John rejected her suggestions outright, adamant that his way was the only way. The tragic reality was that John was unaware of how much his behavior was making his family. They feel unheard and insignificant. His failure to listen created a divide, leaving everyone feeling ignored and disrespected. Listening is not a passive act. It is an active skill that demands genuine focus and respect for others. Stoic philosophy reminds us that listening is the route to learning and growth. In quiet contemplation, we discover profound understanding and wisdom. Conversely, talking without listening is akin to planting seeds in barren ground. Nothing will ever take root. If you recognize yourself in John's story, now is the moment to make a change. The next time your child shares something about their day, or your spouse offers their thoughts, pause and truly listen. Don't just bide your time until it's your turn to speak. Strive to understand. By doing so, you will not only strengthen your family relationships, but also cultivate an atmosphere of love and mutual respect. Remember, the wise person listens. The foolish one only talks. So we have explored the 6 signs of a foolish person. But before you navigate away, wondering, am I foolish? Hold on a moment. The reality is, all of us, at some point in our lives, have displayed one or more of these traits. Perhaps we've been arrogant, clung too stubbornly to our comfort zones, or let's be honest, talked too much without truly listening. Here is the essential takeaway. Recognizing these signs is not about judgment. It is about self-improvement. Stoic philosophy teaches us that wisdom is not derived from always being correct, but from perpetually learning, acknowledging our errors, and being open to growth. Each foolish characteristic is, in fact, a golden opportunity to become wiser. So, if you find yourself identifying with one or more of these traits, consider it an invitation to evolve. Step outside your comfort zone, listen more intently, blame less, and welcome change. This journey is not for the flawless. It is for the courageous, those who can look at themselves and declare, I can do better. Remember, foolishness is a temporary state, but wisdom is a lifelong journey. And on that journey, you are not alone. Continue to grow, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can persist in exploring meaningful lessons together. Thank you for watching.